Snow fell from the sky like soft white feathers, but the cold was sharp like a knife. Captain Ray walked carefully through the frozen forest, his boots crunching on the ice. Behind him, the rest of the team followed, their breath turning to mist in the freezing air. They were sent here to study the planet. Not to help anyone, but something was wrong. Something was strange. They heard it again, a sound. It was not the wind. It was crying. The team stopped. Everyone looked at each other. Is that a child? One of the crew asked. Ray raised his hand to signal silence. He listened. The cry came again, soft, weak, full of pain. They followed the sound through the trees, past broken rocks and frozen roots. Then they saw her, a small figure. Sitting in the snow, she was shaking badly, her purple skin almost blue from the cold. She wore thin cloth, torn and wet. She held something in her arms. Something larger. The team moved closer, and the little figure looked up. She had big, bright eyes filled with tears. Her voice was barely a whisper. Human. Please help her. My mom is dying. Ray knelt down, shocked. This was no human child. She had small horns, and her face was different, but her eyes were the same as any scared child. He looked at the body she was holding. An adult alien woman, unconscious, barely breathing. Ray touched her neck, weak pulse, skin ice cold. We have to get them to the ship, he said. No, said Dr. Lane. We're not allowed to bring natives on board. It's against contact law. Ray looked around. This isn't war, this is survival, he said. She's just a kid. Her mother is dying, but HQ will find out. Then let them, he replied. His voice hard. He took off his jacket and wrapped it around the little girl. She held it tightly, still shaking. Don't worry, he said. We're going to help you. The team moved quickly. Carrying the mother carefully, the girl, her name was Lyra, walked beside Ray. Holding his gloved hand, every few steps she looked back at her mother. Fear in her eyes when they reached the ship. The ramp lowered. Lyra blinked at the bright lights. Afraid? It's okay, said Ray. You're safe now. Inside, the medics got to work. They placed Serena, Lyra's mother, in a heated medical pod. Her skin slowly changed from blue to purple as warmth returned to her body. The medics looked worried. Too long in the cold. One whispered. Her body is shutting down. Lyra sat quietly on the floor. Watching everything, she didn't understand the machines. But she could see that her mom was still not waking up. Ray knelt beside her. Where are the others? He asked. Lyra shook her head. Gone, she said. The cold took them. My mom told me to run, so I did. I ran until I saw your ship. Ray nodded slowly. You were brave, he said. I just wanted to save her, she replied. A tear fell down her cheek. Suddenly, the lights flickered. The captain stood. What was that? Incoming signal, said the comms officer. A red light flashed on the console. It was a drone transmission from the ground. They had been watched. On the screen appeared a message. Unauthorized alien contact detected. Return immediately. Investigation in progress. Ray stared at it for a moment, then turned to the team. We'll deal with it, he said, for now. We focus on saving them. Lyra stood up and walked over to her mother's pod. She pressed her tiny hand to the glass. Please wake up, Mom, she whispered. Please don't leave me alone. Ray watched her silently. In all his years in space, he had seen battles. He had seen alien creatures, strange stars, and distant galaxies. But nothing felt more human than this moment. A child asking for help and a choice to break the law or to save a life. He turned to the medic. Do everything you can, he said. We'll deal with the consequences later. Behind them? On a small screen, the drone camera blinked red. Watching, recording, but Ray didn't care. He had made his choice. He had heard the cry in the cold. And he had answered it because that's what humans do. They help, even when it's not allowed, even when it's dangerous. They help, and now a life might be saved. Maybe even more than one, but deep in the snow-covered forest. Something else was waking up, something cold, something old. And it had seen the warmth too. It was hungry. And it had just opened its eyes. The ship floated quietly above the frozen planet. Inside, everything felt tense. Lyra sat by her mother's side, her small hand resting on the glass of the healing pod. Serena's chest rose and fell slowly. She was alive, but only just. Captain Ray stood near the window, watching the snowstorm outside. He didn't speak, but his eyes were full of worry. The message from command still blinked on the screen. Return immediately. Investigation in progress. They had broken the law by saving the alien mother. And they all knew it. Dr. Lane walked over. Checking the medical screen, she's stable, he said. But it's like her body is missing something. Some kind of deep core heat. Lyra looked up. Her voice small. It's the planet, she said. It steals warmth. The crew turned to her. It wasn't always like this, she added. Our elders told us stories of sun and green sky. But then, the cold came. Ray knelt beside her. Lyra, do you know why the planet changed? Lyra nodded slowly. There are places under the ice, she said. Ancient places. My mom called them warm hearts, but the others called it dangerous. Lieutenant Vega leaned against the wall. Arms crossed, this kid's story sounds like a fairy tale, she said. Ray stood up, calm but firm. Even fairy tales start from something real. He turned to the team. Let's scan the planet again. Look for any heat pockets under the surface while the crew worked. Lyra walked through the ship. Everything amazed her. Metal doors that opened by themselves. Lights that blinked like stars. Machines that hummed gently. She found a room with drawings on the wall, pictures made by a child. A human boy was sitting there. Coloring, he looked up and smiled. Hi, he said. I'm Jake. Lyra smiled back, shy but curious. I'm Lyra. Jake handed her a color pencil. Wanna draw? Lyra hesitated, then took the pencil and sat beside him. For a moment, there was no fear, no cold, just two kids drawing suns they had never seen. Meanwhile, in the control room, the scan results came in. A cluster of strong heat signatures showed deep beneath the ice. Dr. Lane raised his eyebrows. There's something down there, he said. Something big and warm. Ray looked at the data. If these are the warm hearts, maybe they can help us fix whatever's wrong with her. Just then, the ship's lights dimmed. The crew froze. Status. Ray asked. Power fluctuation, said Vega. Temperature dropped by 2 degrees. Ray's voice grew sharp. Are we being hacked? No, said the engineer, checking the panel. It's internal. Something's draining the heat. Dr. Lane ran to the medical bay. Serena's pod was beeping fast. Her skin had turned slightly blue again. The pod's losing heat too, he said. Shocked, Lyra rushed in, eyes wide with fear. She's slipping. Suddenly, alarms blared. Unidentified object on board, the AI said, Deck 3. Hallway C, the team grabbed their gear and ran. The hallway was cold, colder than anywhere else on the ship. Frost crawled along the walls like living veins. Then they saw it, a figure covered in thick ice. Standing in the middle of the hall, it didn't move at first. But its head turned slowly toward them. No face, no eyes, just darkness under a frozen shell. Ray raised his weapon. Identify yourself, he said. The figure stepped forward. And the lights flickered again. Fire. Shouted Vega. The blast hit the figure, but only cracked the outer ice. The creature screeched a sound like shattering glass and rushed forward. The team fell back, firing again. this time breaking off chunks of its body. The ice creature finally collapsed, melting into a puddle of dark water, but everyone was silent, breathing hard. "What was that?" whispered the engineer. Lyra stood in the hallway, her eyes full of fear. "They found us," she said. "The cold ones. They don't want anyone near the warm hearts." The ship trembled slightly, just for a second, deep below the surface of the planet. Something else had awakened, back in the medical bay. Serena stirred. Her voice was weak, like wind through broken glass. "They are coming," she said, eyes still closed. "And they will not stop." Ray looked around at his team. They were explorers, not soldiers, but now they were protectors, and they had already made their choice. "Prepare for liftoff," he said. "We're going deeper." He looked at Lyra, then at Serena. "We're going to find the warm heart," he said, "and end this cold." Outside the ship, the storm grew darker. But inside, hope burned quietly, because humans, they don't run from the cold, they fight it together. The ship moved slowly over the frozen land. Thick clouds covered the sky, and the wind howled like a warning below. Ice stretched endlessly in all directions, hiding secrets too old to remember. Inside the ship, the crew worked quietly, their faces tight with worry. The creature they fought, cold, silent, and deadly, was not the last one. They all felt it. Something was watching. Something ancient. Lyra sat beside her mother's pod, holding her hand. Serena's breathing was slow, but steady. Sometimes she whispered things in her sleep, strange words in her alien language, names from long ago. But then she said something in English. "Clear and cold, they sleep under the ice. They are hungry." Captain Ray stood in the control room, staring at the heat map. 3 large heat sources under the ice. "Around 300 meters deep," said the science officer. Dr. Lane pointed at the largest signal. "That could be the warm heart," he said. "The energy is old but stable, like an ancient generator." Ray nodded. "That's where we're going." Lyra entered the room, her small voice cutting through the silence. "There's a path," she said. "My people used it long ago." Through the old tunnels, she touched the screen, her finger tracing a thin line. "It leads to the warm heart. But it's dangerous." Ray looked down at her. "Why is it dangerous?" he asked. "Because the cold ones sleep there," she said. "And they don't like to be disturbed." The crew prepared quickly. Ray, Vega, Dr. Lane, the engineer, Tomas. And Lyra would go. They suited up, packed heat sources, scanners, and emergency gear as they stood at the ramp. Ready to leave, Jake ran up to Lyra, holding out something. It was a small drawing, 2 figures standing in the sun. "Holding hands for luck," Jake said, smiling. Lyra took it carefully and smiled back. "Thank you," she whispered. The ramp opened with a loud hiss, and the cold air hit them like a wall. They stepped into the storm, their boots crunching on thick ice. The wind pushed against them, but they followed Lyra, who led them toward a broken hill. Behind the hill was a large crack in the ground. A narrow tunnel went deep into darkness. The entrance was covered in strange symbols, glowing faintly. "This was made by your people?" Tomas asked. Lyra shook her head. "No," she said. "This was made before us." They turned on lights and began to walk. Inside the tunnel, the air felt different, still cold, but heavier. The walls were smooth, too perfect to be natural. Strange metal lines ran through the ice, pulsing faintly with red light. "It's like a machine," Dr. Lane whispered. "A machine buried under a planet of ice." As they moved deeper, they found old remains, rusted tools, broken devices, and bones. Lyra looked away, her eyes sad. "They tried to find the warm heart too," she said, "but they never came back." Suddenly, the scanner beeped. "Movement," said Vega, her hand on her weapon. The team stopped, listening. A soft scratching sound echoed in the tunnel. Then silence. "Keep going," Ray said. They reached a large chamber, the walls covered in glowing crystals. In the center was a wide pit, and at the bottom, a giant metallic sphere pulsed gently with orange light. "The warm heart," whispered Dr. Lane. Eyes wide, Ray stepped forward. But Lyra grabbed his arm. "Wait," she said. "It's not safe." Too late, the ground shook, and ice cracked along the walls from the shadows. Several cold ones emerged, tall, silent. Their bodies made of sharp ice and black mist. Their eyes glowed blue, and frost spread where they stepped back. "Now," Ray shouted. They opened fire, heat blasts striking the creatures, melting parts of them. But they kept coming. Tomas set up a heat bomb, then shouted, "Run." They turned and sprinted back through the tunnel as the bomb exploded. Sending a wave of warmth behind them, they reached a narrow corridor and stopped to breathe. The creatures didn't follow, but the tunnel was shaking. "Captain," Dr. Lane said, looking at the scanner. "The warm heart reacted when we entered. It started pulsing stronger." Ray looked at Lyra. "Do you think it knows we're here?" Lyra nodded. "Yes," she said. "It remembers. Back on the ship, the crew watched the readings. The heat signature had grown no longer 3 small dots, but a wave moving beneath the surface. Something big was waking up, something old." Serena's eyes opened slowly in the med bay. Her voice was soft but urgent. "They found it," she said. They woke it up, and outside, under the ice, the world shifted. The cold ones were not the real danger. They were only the servants. Now, the true power under the planet had begun to stir, and it had waited a long time for warmth, for life, for humans. Asterisk, the storm outside the ship had grown stronger. Winds screamed across the ice, shaking the trees like bones. But inside the ship, it was silent, too silent. Captain Ray stood in the command room, staring at the heat map. The underground signals were no longer small or still. They were moving, slowly, but definitely. "They're waking up," whispered Dr. Lane. "The cold ones," said Lyra, standing beside him. "You disturbed them, in the medical bay." Serena lay in her pod, eyes open now. She was weak, but aware. Her voice came slowly, like ice melting. "They are not just creatures," she said. "They are the memory of this world." Ray turned to her, confused. "What do you mean?" "They were created long ago," she said, "not by us, but by the ones who built the warm hearts. They were meant to protect the planet's core. But something went wrong." Serena closed her eyes. "The Guardians became hunters," she said. "They began to take life instead of saving it." A deep rumble shook the ship. "Alarms blinked. Heat drop in engine room," reported Tomas. "They're trying to freeze us," said Vega, grabbing her weapon. "They're here." The crew split into teams. Ray and Vega went to the engine room, while Tomas and Dr. Lane checked the ship's lower levels. Lyra stayed with her mother, holding her hand tightly, but she could feel it. The warmth in the ship was dying, slowly, like a candle burning out. In the engine room, frost covered the walls. Ray stepped carefully, his breath visible in the cold air. Then he saw Itan ice trail, leading into the shadows. "Something came through the wall," said Vega. Shining her light, they followed the trail. Deeper into the room, then they saw the creature. It stood near the core, feeding on the heat. Its body pulsed with cold light, sharp like broken glass, when it saw them. It let out a scream, not loud, but deep. A sound that made their bones shake. "Fire!" shouted Ray. They blasted it with heat rounds, melting parts of its body, but it didn't fall. It moved fast. Sliding across the floor like liquid ice, Vega set off a heat mine. The explosion sent a wave of warmth across the room. The cold ones screamed and melted, leaving behind only steam and black ice. But the damage was done. The engine was failing. Ray touched his earpiece. "Get ready to evacuate," he said. But Dr. Lane's voice came through. Urgent and scared. "There's more," he said. 3 more in the storage deck. The cold ones were everywhere now, feeding, freezing, hunting. And the ship was dying. Lyra stood up, eyes wide. "I can stop them," she said. "No," said Serena weakly. "You don't understand what they are. They are not just ice. They are hate." Old and cold, Lyra stepped back, her small hands clenched. "They took everything from us," she said. "My father, my friends. They froze our world, but I'm not afraid anymore." She ran to the control room. Ray saw her enter and rushed to her. "What are you doing?" "I know how to reach the real warm heart," she said. "The one deep in the core, it can stop them. But we have to act fast." Ray looked at his damaged ship, his tired crew, and the storm getting worse outside. Then he looked at Lyra, her eyes strong with purpose. "Let's do it," he said. They gathered supplies. Heat charges and a scanner pack. Tomas stayed behind to try to keep the ship running. Ray, Vega, Dr. Lane, and Lyra suited up for the descent. They returned to the tunnel, but this time the walls were alive with movement. Whispers filled the air low, cold, like wind speaking in broken words. Shapes moved behind the ice, watching, waiting. They reached a deep shaft and began to climb down. The air grew colder with every step. Lights flickered, the deeper they went. The more the ice changed color from white. Too blue, too dark gray. At the bottom, they found it. The true warm heart, it was massive. A glowing sphere of light and fire pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. It was surrounded by ancient machines, half buried in ice. "It's still alive," said Dr. Lane. Breathless, but barely, Ray stepped forward. Then stopped. The cold ones were here, dozens of them, standing silently between the humans and the warm heart. Not moving, just watching. Then Lyra stepped past Ray. She walked slowly toward the warm heart. The cold ones didn't move, as if they were waiting. She touched a glowing panel, and the sphere brightened. A wave of warmth rushed through the chamber. The cold ones shrieked, stepping back. One of them turned to attack. But Vega shot it down with a heat blast. The others began to melt, slowly, like snow in sunlight. But the warm heart started pulsing faster. "Too fast, it's unstable," Dr. Lane shouted. "It's waking up too fast." Ray looked at the energy levels. Then at Lyra. "If we can connect our ship's power to it, maybe we can help it stabilize." Lyra nodded. Her voice calm. "Then we have to try, above them." The storm screamed louder than ever, but below, something new was starting. Not just survival, but the beginning of change. And the cold ones. They were running out of time. The ship shook again, harder this time. Lights flickered. And panels sparked. Tomas ran through the corridor, carrying a toolbox in one hand and a heat battery in the other. The engines were freezing, the core temperature dropping fast. He slid into the control room and shouted, "Cores down to 10%. We're minutes from total shutdown. Above ground, the storm raged like never before. Snow didn't fall anymore attacked, but deep beneath the surface, where the ancient heart of the planet pulsed with new life. Something else had begun, something human, a choice to fight. Ray crouched near the warm heart, checking the readings. The ancient machine pulsed too fast, glowing bright red. "Overload in 10 minutes, warned Dr. Lane, if it breaks. It might take half the planet with it." Lyra stood in front of the control panel, her hands trembling. "It wants to heal," she said. "But it doesn't know how." Vega checked her rifle, the barrel steaming from the last battle. "We'll have to buy it time," she said. "They'll be coming," and they did. The tunnel walls turned black with frost. Whispers turned to screeches. The cold ones slid through the ice like shadows. Crawling fast, dozens of them, maybe more. Positions. Ray shouted. Vega and Lane took cover behind ancient pillars. Heat rifles ready, Lyra hid near the warm heart. Eyes wide but focused. She had one job: keep the system stable. Ray checked his last grenade, then looked at the enemy. They didn't come to scare. They came to destroy. The cold ones hit like a wave. The first jumped over a fallen beam. Shrieking, Vega fired direct hit. The creature shattered like glass. More came, faster. Lane threw a heat charge. Flames burst across the floor, slowing them down, but not stopping them. Ray grabbed a heat torch and jumped into the fight. He swung it like a sword, cutting through cold bodies. The air filled with steam and the sound of ice cracking. One cold one reached the warm heart. Lyra screamed, but before it could touch her, Ray tackled it. The creature screeched and wrapped its arms around him. He felt the cold sink into his bones, but he didn't let go. Run? He shouted. Lyra cried, no. Then Vega hit the creature from behind with a blast, saving them both. More creatures came, climbing from cracks in the floor and holes in the wall. Dr. Lane fired, his hands shaking. They're endless. No, said Lyra, her voice rising. They are not endless. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the drawing Jake gave her. She held it up to the warm heart. Remember? She whispered. Remember what warmth is? The warm heart pulsed again. Brighter, stronger, it began to push heat through the walls. The cold ones screamed, backing away. Some of them melted on the spot, others fled into cracks. But one, the biggest one, stood still. Watching, its body was taller than the rest. Made of jagged black ice, its eyes glowed red, and its presence made the walls frost again. Their leader, whispered Dr. Lane. It raised one arm, and the air turned to sharp needles of cold. Ray stepped in front of Lyra, shielding her. But the cold one didn't strike. It spoke, not in words, but in feelings. Sadness, hunger, pain. The room grew darker, as if it was trying to show them its memories. A long time ago, it was warmth too, created to protect life, but forgotten, abandoned, left in the cold for centuries. The warmth turned to pain, pain turned to hate, and hate froze everything. Ray stepped forward. You were made to protect, he said. Then help us. The cold one stared at him, unmoving. Then it looked at Lyra, at the drawing she held, and something changed. It stepped back slowly, lowered its arm, and faded into the wall, one by one. The rest of the cold ones vanished too. The tunnels fell silent again. The warm heart glowed softly now. Its pulsing slowed, stable. They're gone, whispered Vega. Lowering her weapon, Dr. Lane let out a long breath. Not gone, he said. Just... Remembering, Ray turned to Lyra. You saved us, he said. No, she replied. You saved me first. Back on the ship, Tomas shouted with joy, powers rising again. Heat filled the engines. Lights turned green. Systems restarted. The ship lived, and so did hope. As they returned to the surface, the storm began to clear. Clouds opened just enough to let the sun touch the land. Only for a second, but enough to melt a single snowflake. Lyra looked up, her eyes filled with light. They'll come back, she said. But next time, they'll know we're not enemies. Ray smiled. They'll know what humans really are. Warm, brave, and never afraid to fight back. The wind had finally calmed. For the first time in many days, the air outside was quiet. The snow still covered the ground like a blanket, but it no longer screamed across the land. Something had changed. The cold ones were gone. For now, inside the ship, warmth had returned. The lights glowed steadily, and the engines hummed softly. It felt alive again. Lyra sat in the observation room, looking out at the endless white. She held Jake's drawing in her hands, worn now, but still bright with color. It reminded her of something new hope. Captain Ray entered, sitting beside her. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "They didn't want to hurt us," she said. "They just forgot who they were." Ray looked out the window. "Even machines can feel pain, I guess," he said. "If they're alone long enough." Dr. Lane walked in with new readings. "The warm heart is stable now," he said. "But it's not just a power source." Ray raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" Lane placed the datapad on the table. "It's alive," he said. "Not like us. Not with blood and skin. But it thinks, it feels." Serena, now walking with slow steps, joined them. She had recovered enough to stand, though her skin still held traces of cold. "It was a protector," she said, "built by an ancient race long before mine. They feared their son would die. So they placed warm hearts deep in their planets to keep life going. But when the sun didn't die, they left. And the protectors were forgotten." Lyra's voice was soft. "They waited too long in the dark." Serena nodded. "The cold ones were their hands, their watchers, but with no commands. They changed." Suddenly, an alert blinked on the screen. "Energy spike underground," Tomas called from the control room. Ray and the others rushed to the monitors. A new heat signal was rising. Larger than before, not from the warm heart, but from below it, something deeper. Another system. Vega asked. Dr. Lane looked closely. "Or a second core," he said. "It could be a backup. Or a failsafe." Ray narrowed his eyes. "Or a weapon." They had to go back. This time, deeper. The warm heart might have healed. But the planet still held more secrets, and if one of those secrets was dangerous, they had to know. The descent began again. Ray, Lyra, Vega, and Lane suited up, this time with extra power cells and a portable link to the ship's core. "We'll tether the warm heart to the ship," Tomas said. "It'll boost our heat if things go bad. Let's hope we don't need it," Ray replied. The path was longer this time, the ice deeper, darker. They passed through the chamber where they fought the cold ones. Now quiet, the warm heart glowed steadily in the center. Watching them, Lyra placed her hand on it. "It's guiding us now," she said. As they moved past the heart, the ice opened on its own. A door forming from the walls, the path revealed itself. As if the planet had finally decided to let them in, they stepped into a massive cavern. At the center was a glowing orb, larger than the warm heart, humming low and deep. It was surrounded by strange machines, taller than buildings, covered in vines of frozen wires. "This is not just a core," said Lane. "It's a brain." Vega moved closer, scanning the machines. "It's been thinking all this time," she said. Ray nodded slowly, "And now it knows we're here." Suddenly, the orb pulsed bright red, the walls shook, and a deep voice filled the chamber. "Not sound, but thought. You woke us," it said. "You healed the heart, but will you heal the mind?" Ray stepped forward. "We want to help," he said. The voice answered. "Prove it," from the shadows. A new figure formed, not ice, not machine. A mix of both, tall and silent. It held no weapon, but its eyes glowed with warning. Lyra stepped in front of it. "We're not here to take. We're here to remember," she said. She held up Jake's drawing again. "Your world isn't dead, not yet." The figure paused, then lowered its head. A soft hum filled the air. The orb turned from red to gold. "We remember warmth," the voice said. "Then share it," Ray replied. The machine core opened a small hatch, revealing a glowing crystal. It pulsed with gentle, light, pure energy. Lane scanned it and gasped. This could heat an entire colony for 100 years. Ray looked at Lyra. "Your people could live again," he said. Lyra smiled through tears. "No," she said. "We all could." They returned to the ship with the crystal. Serena touched it and closed her eyes. "It feels like home," she whispered. The cold ones didn't return, not because they were destroyed, but because they remembered they had been protectors once. Now, they would protect again. The warm heart pulsed gently as the ship prepared to leave. Ray looked back at the frozen land, still covered in snow. But no longer lifeless, change had begun. And warmth had returned, not just to the planet, but to everyone. The stars above the frozen world sparkled brighter than before. The storm was gone, the winds were calm, and the land once ruled by silence and fear was beginning to breathe again. Inside the human ship, soft music played from the speakers. Not loud, not for celebration, but quiet and warm, like the feeling of home. Lyra stood beside the glowing crystal, the gift from the ancient machine core. Its soft light filled the ship, touching every corner with gentle warmth. She closed her eyes and let it wrap around her like a blanket. For the first time in her life, she wasn't cold. Captain Ray watched her from the doorway. He didn't say anything, just smiled. Lyra turned to him and said, "It's strange." Ray tilted his head. "What is this feeling?" she said. "Like I'm not alone anymore." Ray nodded. "You're not in the medical bay." Serena sat up without help. Her strength had returned. And the color in her skin was brighter. She looked out the window at the snow-covered mountains and said, "They're healing, just like me." Dr. Lane checked her readings and smiled. "You were frozen on the outside," he said. "But your heart was never cold." Serena gave him a tired smile. "Maybe that's what saved me." Tomas ran into the control room. "Holding a data pad, Captain?" he said. "You need to see this." Ray took the pad and read the message. It was from Command. Their case had been reviewed. They had broken contact law, yes, but their actions had saved a dying species. A decision had been made. They were forgiven. And more than that, they were asked to stay to help rebuild. Ray set the pad down and looked out the window. This wasn't just a mission anymore. It was a beginning. In the ship's main room, the crew gathered. Lyra stood at the center, holding Jake's drawing. Serena stood behind her, her hands on her daughter's shoulders. Ray stepped forward, holding the crystal. "We were strangers," he said, "from different worlds, but we heard a cry, a voice that asked for help, and we answered." He turned to Lyra. "You reminded us what it means to be human, not just to survive, but to care, even when it's not easy." Lyra looked around at the faces. Some tired, some smiling. "I thought the cold ones were monsters," she said. "But they were just forgotten when you showed them kindness. They remembered who they were." Vega stepped forward, arms crossed, but eyes soft. "So," she said, "what now?" Ray looked at everyone. "Now we stay. For a while," he said. "We teach them what warmth feels like again, and maybe," added Dr. Lane, "we learn from them too, over the next days." The crew worked with Serena and Lyra to map the tunnels. The cold ones, no longer attacking, guided them silently through ancient paths. Together, they restored the flow of heat from the warm hearts to the surface. Patches of green began to appear where ice once ruled. Life was returning. One morning, Jake handed Lyra a new set of color pencils. "These won't melt," he said proudly. Lyra laughed and hugged him. Then sat beside him to draw. This time, she didn't draw the sun. She drew people, human and alien, sitting around a fire, laughing, sharing food, telling stories, together. Ray stood beside Serena, watching the kids. "Earth is still far," he said, "but we can build a home here." Serena nodded. "Home isn't always where you're born," she said. "Sometimes it's where someone chooses to stay." A new base was built on the surface. Not just for humans, not just for aliens, for both. They called it Unity Point. One day, Lyra stood on the hill above the base. Holding a small recorder, she pressed a button and spoke. "To anyone out there," she said. "This is Lyra. I was cold, alone, afraid, but the humans came. And they changed everything. They broke their rules to help someone like me. They gave us back the light." She paused, then smiled softly. "If you're lost," she said, "if you're cold, find a human. They don't run from the dark. They bring the fire with them." The message was sent into space. Across stars, maybe someone far away would hear it. And maybe, just maybe, they would believe in warmth again. Back on the ship, the warm heart pulsed gently. Not alone, not forgotten, watched now by those who understood it. Those who felt like it did cold once, but not anymore. Because humanity had come, and humanity never leaves anyone behind, even in the coldest places, even in the darkest times. Humans light the fire, and they keep it burning, together.